How you get interested in Bitcoin? How it started?
So, as Open Dialog Foundation, we started use Bitcoin and stablecoins as a tool of basically bank of last resort because we were deprived of the right to have traditional financial instruments like banking services, like insurance services, because of political persecution organized by 3 authoritarian states or illiberal states. At that time it was Kazakhstan, it was Moldova during Plahotniuc time, oligarch Plahotniuc, and unfortunately Poland, once we defended rule of law and judges and human rights in the country. So what's happened? Basically, all of our banking data was weaponized against us, our donors, our accountant, our volunteers, and our recipients of the funds. And at the end of the day, bank in Belgium, because I was forced to move at some point from Poland to Belgium, were terminating one by one our bank accounts. We started to analyze what's happening, and during this time, while we were defending our rights to use traditional financial instruments, we used Bitcoin to fundraise, to survive, being in the heart of Europe. So it's not something abstract for us. It is basically human rights tool. This is the first thing. The second thing that we use Bitcoin to deliver humanitarian aid to Ukraine, specifically after full Russian invasion to Ukraine since last year. We were capable to deliver on the second day of the war hundreds of sets of bulletproof vests, helmets, medical equipment, because we were used speed of Bitcoin, and while everyone was waiting transactions of traditional financial system, which was actually paralyzed completely in Ukraine, we used Bitcoin to fundraise, and we were able to deliver on the second day of the war hundreds of sets of bulletproof vests and helmets to Lviv and even to Kyiv. So, and we, of course, now have fundraised over 7 million euro and delivered over 70,000 of pieces of protective equipment to Ukraine. The third course is to support families of political prisoners and actually human defenders in authoritarian states. And in our coalition, we run a coalition, Building True Change Coalition, BTC Coalition in Europe. And there are activists from Turkey, from Kazakhstan, from Belarus, from Russia, like Navalny Foundation, from even African countries, Palestine. All of us, we experience the same problem. We cannot use traditional financial instruments because regimes capable to control and weaponize our banking data against all our activists and all of our network of human defenders in these countries. What's happening? For example, in Palestine, one of member of our coalition, Fadi El-Salamin, his banking data was published on a website of extremist organizations. And as a result, his family members and his house were shot with a 60 live bullet by terrorist organization. It's a retaliation for his anti-corruption activism. In Kazakhstan, if, for example, someone wants to fundraise money for example, support Ukraine or just for family for political prisoners, it takes only 3 to 5 minutes to freeze bank account if you announce it on social media. So imagine speed. How fast your bank account can be terminated in authoritarian states. And we don't even mention in African countries which completely deprive the right to have banking services because there is no identification and there is no KYC procedure for this population. So Bitcoin in all of this situation became a tool of a bank of last resort. It became a tool for actually also Belarusian opposition who experienced one of the biggest leak of donations. For example, over 60,000 of people were exposed for regime of Lukashenko, because actually GoFundMe, Patronite, Facebook, they were forced to give all the basically donors' data to Bank of Belarus. And of course, special services of Belarus use this data to accusing all of these people who donated even €1 or something like this in extremism or financing extremism, and some of them were sentenced up to 17 years. So it's a huge problem. And again, in all of this situation, we already have proven with the years of experience of using Bitcoin that it's safe transaction. So for us, it's crucial to have a special regulation. This is the reason why we meet with a lot of regulators across Europe, explaining them social goods, why we use Bitcoin as a bank of last resort, as a tool for delivering humanitarian aid, as a tool for human rights. And this is how we operate.
Do you think people in Europe here understand these problems, or how conscious about this looks?
I think that a lot of people in Europe, they don't understand this problem because first of all, they have a privilege. They use traditional financial instruments. They don't experience the problem of exclusion. But with upcoming regulation, which became more tough and tough for those who actually, for example, accused falsely or attacked by a smear campaign, will be an issue. And you have no procedure so far how to defend your right, how to restore your right if you lose bank account. And what you can do nowadays without bank account? I mean, you just have no means to survive in Europe, right? You cannot rent an apartment, you cannot pay your taxes. You have to, but you can't, right? You cannot run your company. So it's a huge problem. And a lot of people, they not understand that you can find this solution like Bitcoin to operate freely. But there is a general trend. Unfortunately, if you look into the general narrative of regulators, they want to regulate crypto assets providers and crypto assets generally in the same way as a banking system. That means it's going to be basically exposed on the same violations.
Do you mean MiCA regulations?
No, MiCA regulation is just one of the parts. It's like MiCA regulation gives the order somehow. Of course, it also has its issues, but generally it's a protection for customers. It's used to be on a draft regulation very aggressive. We work hard with regulators to, for example, eliminate very negative language on Bitcoin mining, which is, we see, absolutely was ungrounded. It was based on outdated information from the past, which has nothing to do with reality. No one is using traditional, electricity pricing right now for mining of Bitcoin, but most of regulators, they are unaware about this information, and they, of course, use this all smear campaign existing in mainstream media to attack or even to regulate Bitcoin. So our role to explain regulators that it's actually false information and to share with them what is in reality. And bearing in mind all of this situation, it's really crucial role of media, it's really crucial role of Bitcoiners to spread real information, what purposes cause Bitcoin, how it can be used every day and change your life every day.
For me, as someone who operates a Bitcoin company in Poland, it's very difficult to do this because Polish banks don't want to open accounts for companies who have something to do with Bitcoins.
But now, with upcoming regulation, so it's anti-money laundering regulation in Europe, is going to be changed. Why? Because we as activists were together with Bitcoiners, for example, like Obin Vosu, who is founder of Fediment, we were going to over 100 regulators across Europe and explained that we use Bitcoin actually for humanitarian and human rights. And we need to have bank of last resort. So it's legitimate activity. So if you look into the provision of adopted report on anti-money laundering regulation, you would see that NGOs, activists, and all associated entities who use in crypto assets, they are going to have bank of last resort. So we will have this bridge before you have this mass adoption between fiat and crypto assets providers. And this is extremely important because we as also NGOs cannot use something which will have negative reputation from regulators. So it's really important to work together to improve it. And a lot of regulators, they understand it once they understand what is the Bitcoin and what social goods it causes for population, for their electors, So this is something what homework we have to do together. And next time you would have this bank account because Polish government, it's one, luckily for the moment, one of 27 countries which will be regulated with upcoming regulation, which force them to give bank of last resort for every company.
Now, many central banks are working on central bank digital currency. Last time, chief of European Central Bank said that it would provide less anonymity than banking system. What do you think about this coming CBDCs and threats about they can?
We look for this with a great concern, honestly, because we see what's happening in China, we see what's happening in Turkey, we see what's happening in all of these authoritarian countries, right? And for us, CBDC, it's something like a nightmare. It's like one of the weakest points which can, unfortunately, expose the whole democratic countries. So we want to participate in this process. We call also Bitcoiners specifically to participate in this process. So we explain regulators because most of them, I met with hundreds of regulators and I have to say that most of them, they're unaware of consequences, what they are voting for the moment, because they follow mainstream media. mainstream media expose only criminal narrative against Bitcoin and extremely only positive about CBDCs. There is no balance, and we need to work on it. So this is something what has to be fixed right now, and it's a huge, huge risk for democracy. For the moment, how it's shaped with CBDCs, it's going to be just like instrument of policing, on you every day and night, whenever you move in. It's already right now happening with anti-money laundering regulation. We have real examples, even in my case, Moldovan government, Polish government, just to prosecute me and my family members, our activists of foundation. We're using banking, to do surveillance on the Belgium soil. The same was, for example, done with Kazakhstani activists, with Turkish activists. It's happening everywhere. So we need to protect our banking data. We need to have this safeguard. This is something we are advocating for. And we need to pay attention and, of course, block all of these crazy activities if they are wanted to be included in CBDC. So it's not a good idea.
Okay. Well, I heard that Ukrainian government has some plans to make a digital country after the war to speed up the recovery process. Do you know something about this?
It's hard to say because for the moment, Ukrainian parliament operates in war circumstances. So there was quite good legislative initiative which was quite liberal for crypto assets. It was even supported by the parliament, but not taken into the force. The last discussion with the Ukrainian government was that they are going to follow MiCA and anti-money laundering regulation. It's hard to say for the moment whether they're going to introduce CBDC or not, because you need to have technical potential. And in the moment, you are solving more existing problems. You have, dump, explosion, you have your banking system can basically paralyze in every moment. With CBDC, you expose your citizens for different kind of attacks, for everything. And this is the reason why actually Ukrainian government was forced to use Bitcoin to fundraise from the first days of a Russian full invasion to Ukraine. So
do you know how big is this help with Bitcoin for Ukrainian government for charity?
It's over 100 million of dollars from one sources up to 200 million of dollars for other sources. We don't know. I mean, it's different, strategies how they basically calculate these amounts, but it's huge amount, and it's the most important that this money came before traditional financial system was rebuilt, was able to operate in situation in Ukraine after Russian invasion to Ukraine. And the second, crypto community, Bitcoiners, they helped first before even traditional donors send any money to Ukraine. So I would say a lot of Ukrainian lives were saved, and I'm really, really grateful. We would not be able also to organize this fundraising without the speed of Bitcoin.
Come back to the Prague. What do you think about this conference? What are your reflections?
I think it's one of the most important events in Europe. Very well organized panels, very interesting. Just amazing people, both from Bitcoin side, but also because we see this coherence, cooperation of end users and those who are industry people. I think it's one of the most important impact at the end of the day, because you listen the voices of civil society. A lot of Bitcoiners, they know civil society representatives, and we feel this support. So we feel that, for example, when Fedi developed something or Stripe developed something, they listen our voice and then they implement our advices how to make secure transactions, how to defend us as end users when oppressive regimes persecute us, why it matters. So I think it's one of the most amazing events in Europe.
Yeah, it's like it reminds me the first Bitcoin events, what happened like in 2012, 2013, 13, where it wasn't about investment, it was about the ideas, about freedom of money, freedom of choice.
Yes, I think we live in a reality when we just cannot be observers. We have to participate in real shaping the world, shaping the values of this world and defending values of the world. And I see Bitcoiners and activists, they're real activists. You fight for freedom, financial freedoms, and we do the same. We just need to unite our forces.